Young Pimp C, I'm fucking with Primo. It's going down, baby.
My mic is loud and my production is tight.
We run shit. I ain't playing with.
Екипата на Блабла беше на настанот предавање посебноста на нојз музиката во Азија и Африка. Евентот се случуваше во автономниот културно-социјален центар во соработка со Post Global Recording. Прво се одржа предавање, а потоа се проектираше филмот Субкултуралната револуција Шангај на Зеф Ашер. Документарен саунд арт филм за модерен Шангај низ очите и вревата на младата група Torturing Nurse. Повеќе детали ќе ни каже во интервјуто еден многу кул лик, Сидрик. Тој е роден во Заир со грчко, белгиско и конголско потекло. Во Македонија е како дел од својата светска тура каде што посетува повеќе од 50 светски метрополи.
Tonight I'm going to make a presentation about electronic and experimental music from Africa and Asia. This is my main focus for a few years. I'm publishing some artists from Asia and Africa on my label, and I'm doing a lot of research regarding the history of this kind of music in Africa and in Asia. Following this presentation, I'm going to talk. I'm going to screen a film done by Zef Asher. Unfortunately, Zef passed away a few years ago, and the film is about a Chinese noise band called Torturing Nurse. And following the presentation and the film, there will be a concert that I will play, a short electroacoustic music concert. To me, these lectures are important because what I studied when I was at the conservatory was this official history. So, like the West invented everything in the 1940s, 50s, like Pierre Schaeffer, for example, or Stockhausen and John Cage, and so on and so forth. And I say it's not true. Other composers in Africa and in Asia, and also in Latin America, but I have no time to speak about that, were also into this kind of music. It was certainly less than in Europe in general, even in the Eastern countries later. But I want to sort of rewrite history and add those composers to the history books. To me, it's really important, and also speak about what's going on now in some of those countries in Africa and in Asia, as in some of them the scene is pretty big, like in China, in Indonesia, and of course Japan, South Korea. But there are many people doing electronic music in Egypt, for example, or even in Turkey, Iran, Lebanon. And I think it's important to tell it, and people should think that it's not only in the Western world, if we say so, that people do play electronic music.
You said that the creator of the film passed away. Did you know him? That's one of the reasons why you're presenting the film, or?
Yes, I never met, unfortunately, but we were exchanging emails, and he sent me this DVD, telling me that it was not the final version of the film, but he wanted people to see it. And in the end, I never screened it nowhere, but I know I'm one of the few persons to have the film. The film was screened a few weeks ago in Paris by a friend of mine, and it may be one of the first screenings of this film in Europe. So we might have the second one here in Skopje. And I really wanted to share it because it would be sad to lose this document.
You're on tour often. Can you make a comparison between Asia and here?
Well, Asia is really big, so it's hard to tell. It's just, it's especially in Far East Asia. There are many cities and countries where people do play various styles of electronic music, of improvised music, electroacoustic music, noise, experimental, and so on. So I would say that in major cities, for example, in China or Japan or Indonesia, there are often performances and even more and more strangers going there to perform. But it's really hard to compare between Europe and Asia, because even in Europe there are some places where very few people would come, like I'm sure in Skopje, and more people would come in Beijing, for example. On the other hand, in some other countries, like in Myanmar, for example, it's totally new there. So there was the first festival of so-called experimental music this year, and people came because it's everything was forbidden until recently in that country. So people are really curious. They want to discover many things, basically. On the other hand, in some other countries, it's very difficult. In places like Kuwait, for example, or even Laos, there is practically nothing happening over there regarding this kind of music and even other styles. I would say for Asia, the most active scenes are in for the Middle East are in Turkey and Lebanon and Israel, and then it's in Far East Asia in many countries, I would say, not all of them, but in most. And Central Asia is a bit quieter, and South Asia as well, but there are little pockets in India or Bangladesh or Pakistan, for example, or even Uzbekistan. A few people doing this music, but I would not always call that a scene. Sometimes it's just a few people in one or two cities doing something. And Europe has perhaps an older history regarding this kind of music, I think.
And how long have you been doing your work?
Oh, the most serious part of the work, let's tell, I started about 10 years ago when I went 6 months on tour in Asia to collect music and meet people, and I was just exploring. I had been nowhere but Thailand before that, so and I spent time in China, in Singapore, Malaysia, Laos, and so on to discover music. And I've been also to North Africa and the Middle East just a bit afterward, and I think it's mostly from that point. But even though in the late 80s, early 90s, I was already looking for music from Asia, Africa, and Latin America, but it was more difficult for me, especially in the early times. No internet. We had to send letters and wait for a cassette to come or something. It was not a big project back then. I was just curious, and then 10 years ago about it became a kind of obsession, and I thought, okay, I need to write about it, I need to publish things and make a database and so on.
This young Pimp C, I'm fucking with Primo. It's going down, baby.
My mic is loud and my production is tight. We run shit. I ain't playing with.
Екипата на Бла Бла присуствуваше во пивница каде што се одржуваше хуманитарна вечер за Марга. Настапуваа повеќе бендови со джем сешен, на пивница правеше бесплатна храна цел ден. Се продаваше и рачно изработен накит, а сите средства беа донирани за Марга. Следува интервјуто со незе и незината мајка.
Денеска сме овде со една хумана цел, тоест да собереме пари за потребната, не да кажам операција, туку потребно лекување во Русија, кое што треба да го извршиш. Овде во пивница Старград, денеска пробавме да собереме некои донации, меѓутоа тоа не е доволно, треба да собереме уште. Кажем зашто се работи и колку тоа ќе ти допринесе на тебе.
Се работи за третманот со матични клетки, за кој дознав случајно 2012 година и решив да подпишам договор со русите, но целиот тој третман чини 21.000 евра. Третманот не е одобрен од наша, значи не поддржувам финансиски, така да цели затоа собирам веќе 3 години по хуман пат донации. Сето тоа е убризгување, значи на матичните клетки, ги земаат од маскно ткиво, ги обработуваат и после да ги оприскуваат во работниот стол.
Колку тоа тебе ќе ти помогне во животот, колку тоа ќе те направи среќна, јас сум сигурна дека премногу.
И јас верувам дека сега не знам точно во процент, но мислам дека ќе има доста подобрување и сега ќе ме направи многу среќна.
Че тоа ти е желба за 2015 година да заменеш во Русија?
Да, тоа ми е најголемата желба, кој што кажав, трета година како што собирам и веќе сакам да заменам.
Тоа што им препорачаме нашите гледачи да донираат на броевите на T-Mobile и VIP.
070 143 114 и 077 143 077.
И нормално да пратат каде имаме хуманитарни забави и концерти, да доаѓаат и да не посетуваат за нас збавуваме и да донираме.
Нормално. Им благодарам на сите што се вечерва тука, на тебе како организатор и на бендот кој свири веќе со часови тука, ви благодарам на сите.
Ала ти на тебе, Марга, што ете денеска заедно се дружиме и се надам дека ќе успееме оваа година да ја оствариме твојата цел.
Јас не се сомневам. Ви благодарам.